It is Tuesday, May 14th, 7:34 a.m. I'm here with Mr. Szlachetka. How are you doing?
I'm doing well this morning. How are you?
All right, I'm well. Do I have consent to record?
Yes, you do.
All right. So first, can you talk a little bit about your family and where you grew up?
Okay. Born and raised a Pittsburgher. All right. Probably about 20 miles north of here, Lower Borough, Pennsylvania, and basically I spent my entire life in the Pittsburgh area.
All right. Can you talk a little bit about how Borough was whenever you were growing up?
It was a nice small town, small town America, sort of thing. Close knit community, very supportive community, especially to its youth. There was a lot of activities and things that we could participate in, and so it was a nice place to grow up.
Okay. And I know you played football while growing up, so did you have any dreams of playing in the NFL?
Just like every kid that puts the pads on, it's one of those things. You're like, well, boy, wouldn't this be great to
Yeah.
great to do, and to strive for that. But that was always, that was not so much the ultimate goal, but it was something that you strive for. You want to try to play at at the highest your highest level to compete and also to challenge yourself.
And how far did you go and play football?
I started when I was 6 years old. Organized sports were a big thing, but it was a lot different than it is now. There wasn't all these camps and combines and all that sort of stuff. You were when the summertime rolled around, you played baseball, and fall came around, you put on the football helmet, and
Mm-hmm.
winter rolled around, you either wrestled or basketball, so you just did that. So I started when I was 6, played the whole way through high school and through college. I was blessed with the opportunity to play, at the collegiate level.
Yeah.
I actually had some tryouts with some professional teams, and so that was kind of neat. It was one of those situations where you kind of fell into it.
Yeah.
Because at the time when I was coming out of college, the NFL, they were threatening a strike, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
so it was one of those that teams were, they were expanding their horizons a little bit in case something did happen. They have a deeper pool of players, and so it was a great experience to do that.
What team was that?
I had tryouts with the Raiders, with Cincinnati, and with the Packers.
Okay.
I ended up going with Cincinnati.
Wow.
Yeah. So I wore that ugly helmet for a little bit.
And how did your love for computer science start?
It was something that really I picked up in college.
Oh, okay.
And it was. So you have to realize, I'm an old dude, okay,
Yeah.
So technology wasn't as prevalent as in the lives of people as it is today, and so it was more of in its baby steps, considered to where we are now, and just had just one of those you take a class or two because you were required and you just kind of gain an interest with it. I actually piggybacked that onto when I was in college as a second major. I had that in business. Business administration was my other major. So I felt that really prepared me because I had a business sense of things, and also how technology can incorporate with that. I was able to obtain an internship with Westinghouse Electric Corporation and actually spent 3 summers there at the EMD facility. That's what there was called, the Electrical Mechanical Division, which is up here in Cheswick,
Mm-hmm.
Pennsylvania. And it was really neat because they dealt a lot with the naval contracts.
Oh, wow.
Like stuff with motors and turbines and stuff like that you see on destroyers and submarines and stuff of that nature. So it was a really great experience, to be honest with you.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Did you have any dreams while growing up that weren't related to computer science?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's one of those where, growing up, your dreams change.
Yeah.
It's one of those, like, one day you want to be an astronaut, next day you want to be, you want to do different things. So computer science really, didn't really come into play until
College.
Yeah, until college.
Okay,
with that. Yeah.
All right. And I know you worked at Westinghouse Electric Corporation as a systems engineer.
Yes.
So how did you like that job compared to teaching?
I was very fortunate. I loved the job. I really did. I worked with some great people there. As a matter of fact, the gentleman who was my last boss, my last manager, we've been in contact, and keep in contact with each other even after all these years. Actually came to, traveled out to Ohio for our wedding. So it's one of those things. So I worked with some great people. The projects that I dealt with were challenging, and I think it really helped me, like coming into the classroom as a teacher, being able to bring that what they call the world life experience, into the classroom, and hopefully being able to share that with students at different times.
Okay. And coming out of college, did you expect to become a teacher?
It was one of those things. I wanted to be a teacher, but when you took a look at the environment of teaching, and you see that still now. The pay and things of that nature. I kind of put that on the back burner a little bit. I was very fortunate. Westinghouse Electric Corporation had a program that they instilled where they used to try to get people to volunteer to go into some of the inner city schools and things of that nature to help tutor students and just try to get them interested in just sciences, math and any type of sciences and engineering. And I volunteered and did that, and I remember it was every Wednesday. It was one of those things that you had to make sure you had your projects where it needed to be. And I kind of found myself like really circling those Wednesdays, like really pumped up to go and work with some kids, and they were they were interesting, and they were interested in what we were doing, and working with little guys, they get all crazy sometimes, and it's like, oh my goodness, that's what really kind of sparked it a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did you end up coming to SSA?
Actually, I was a coach here before I actually started teaching.
Oh, okay.
So Mr. Deal was the athletic director at the time, and he was looking to fill a position, from a coaching position on the football staff, and knew of me, and made a communication, and I came and interviewed, and so I first was hired on as a coach. Okay. So my first interaction was with student athletes, and just seeing how how student athletes here, how we do things, okay, was really like a wow, wow moment. And I remember this was actually a jokingly, like Mr. Rossi was the defensive coordinator at the time. He coached. He was also the dean of students. Did chemistry and also taught an English class. So he was doing a lot of things. And as a joke, I was just saying, if you ever need help in your computer science part, give me a call. It's like ha ha ha, one of those routines. And then following March, he called me, and one of the teachers was leaving, and he asked me if I'd be interested, and I was like, Tom, I don't have a teaching certification.
Okay.
And he's like, well, you just really what you need is to be a master in your field, have certain years experience, and I came in with the interview, taught a class, things of like that, and was offered the position.
Okay. And how did you end up teaching math also?
That was something that computer science and math kind of go hand in hand a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, a lot of the skill set that you need in one, you try to transfer into the other. Actually, the former head of school, the senior school, Sophie Lau, we were short a section, and asked me if I would be interested in doing it. I felt it would help me out a little bit too, give me a different perspective of a different discipline. A lot of the teachers, like Mr. Wizard, he did math and also computer science. My other colleague, Mr. Haytalk, he actually taught a course in a history elective at one time. So what people don't realize is that, a lot of the educators here, we kind of do different things.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of keeps you fresh too.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a challenge.
And you came and coached for football.
Yes.
Okay. And I also heard you coached other sports.
Yeah.
Which other sports were those?
I was the first coach of our girls ice hockey team.
Oh, okay.
Because I played ice hockey in college, but
Really?
it was more from a club standpoint. It wasn't at any high level or anything like that. Until the football coach basically said, you injured, we had to take away your scholarship. So I guess I'll put the skates up. Marietta Lemieux, I was not. Okay, but our ice hockey program, our girls' ice hockey program, was actually started by students, female students, when we had our boys team. Went to Mr. Deal, okay, and so they would like to start a program. Mr. Deal worked with them, and got an interest, a number of interests and things of that nature, and really carried the torch for, our female student athletes. And Mr. Deal made it happen, and asked me if, it was one of those, hey, I got a job, I got a proposition for you. What do you think about this? And it was great because it was really the first time that I coached, female athletes. And I come from a family of all boys.
Yeah.
Okay. And my daughter was the first girl in 6 generations. So we were all boys, sort of thing. So it was a great experience. I remember coming home and telling my wife that that Mr. Dill offered me a head coaching job as the girls' ice hockey coach. My wife was coached our girls' basketball team here for many years, and she said, "Well, you have to realize coaching girls is a lot different than coaching boys." And I'm like, athletes are athletes, and I was wrong, okay, but it was in a great way, and I think that experience really. It's one of the experiences I will always treasure, coming out of Shady side when I look back on things, having that opportunity and see that.
And what was your first impression on Shady side?
Wow.
Wow.
Like driving on the campus. Like I said, I grew up not too far from here, but I have to be very honest with you. I never knew the place, was here. It really. A school like Shady Side really wasn't an option for me growing up.
Yeah.
But I remember driving onto campus the first time, and first of all thinking, my goodness, what a hidden jewel this is, and how beautiful it is. And thinking, my gosh, this is a college campus. If you didn't know where you were, and someone blindfolded you and just took it off, and you're in the middle of campus and you're looking around, you would think that you were in a college campus. And so the first impression from the eye test, the physical was very impressive. And as I had an opportunity to work with the adults and some of the student athletes and things like that, I was, I was very impressed with what, what was going on here, how people treated each other. And it's one of those things I really hope that the students that have an opportunity to go here, when you're 15, 16, 17 years old, you're really not thinking that.
Yeah.
You're just like, I'm trying to get through school, one of those things. But when you guys are in your 20s and 30s, you're going to look back on that and say, wow, what an opportunity I had.
Yeah.
And, that's when you're going to, and hopefully you guys will reach back before then and, say, thanks to the people that, that been with you for every step of the way, and but yeah, my first impression was a wow impression with that, and just seeing what like our student athletes do. I mean, like I said, my first exposure to us was from an athletic standpoint, and seeing, and hearing and interacting with the students and see what their coursework is like, what's expected of them afterwards, and was very impressive.
And were there any teachers that have like a lasting impact on you that you worked with here?
Growing up or here?
Here, Shady
Here?
side.
When I got here, there were teachers I would refer to as scholars. Okay, and I was extremely blessed to interact with them and learn from them. Dr. Sowers, who was in our history department, taught economics and history, was intimidating. and I'm like, I'm in my late 20s, early 30s or whatever, and I was intimidated. It's like, whoa, okay. Great people like Frank McCarthy, Joe Felder, Dr. David Weil, who was in our science department. I mean, when I came in, the people that were here, that were established, really set a high bar, and were willing to help you. I remember Joe Felder, who was a math teacher. I had to teach this one unit on big O notation in computer science, and it was just one of those things like, how do I get this across to the students? It's like, complicated process. How do I get this across? And he took time away from, his lunch or whatever, and I showed him what I was doing, and he actually sat down with me and like, okay, I'm the student, how are you going to get this across to me? And it so happened that he had a free period when I was teaching that class, and he came in to observe and to help me out, things like that. So and it's always been that kind of supportive environment, from the faculty.
And I know you came to Shady Side in 1994, right?
Yeah, a long time ago.
So how has Shady Side changed?
You weren't even born yet.
Yeah, I wasn't born yet. I wasn't born for another, what is it? Like,
all right, make me feel old. Thanks, bud. Yeah, I wasn't born for another 20 years. That's not.
So, how has Shady Side changed since you first got here?
Well, just like anything else. I mean, one of the things that you can always you can always count on is change. And I think Shady Side has done a great job of taking a look at where we are, as a society, trying to make the appropriate changes for our students to help them further along in their future, but still holding on to some of the core values that were instilled in this in this institution when it was created back in the 1800s. And I think that's important too. You have to know where you came from, and society changes on a daily basis. But it's nice to know, like, with all that change, there's still, core values and core things that you can always hang your hat on. And I think that's really important.
And would you say Shady has progressed in a good or bad way?
I think it's progression. You have to keep up with what's going on. It's like the old saying, you can't win the Indy 500 with a school bus. I mean, you may finish the race, but you're not going to be competitive.
Yeah.
Okay, you're not giving that driver the tools to do its job. And from a progression standpoint, our job is to part of our obligation to our students, to our families, to us as an educational institution, is to make sure that we prepare our students, for what's going to face them, when they leave the walls of Shady Side. Not just so much from an educational standpoint, but also who you are as a human. Okay, that's the big thing. I think we do a great job with keeping in touch with our kids. I was, we talked earlier about, your first wow impressions. You realize that every student that enters these gates, the first day of school, their senior school career, they have an adult assigned to them. I went to a public school in Burl.
Yeah.
All right, we had one guidance counselor. The gentleman was great, and he worked tremendously with kids and whatever, but that's a big job for when you're graduating, 200 and some kids, for one person. Where, when you walked on your first day, I remember your freshman advisor was Mr. Rossi.
Mr. Rossi, yeah.
Okay, and you were assigned to Mr. Rossi the very first day. And, you had, coaches that interacted with you, from, fall preseason. So there's always that adult presence in your life, in schools where you don't see that in a lot of schools. So we hope that we prepare you academically, but also, for being a good human.
All right. And you have been very liked by many students with your teaching style. So what makes a good teacher?
Well, of course, the grasp of knowledge, but that's not always, that's not the main ingredient. I've had professors and teachers that were just geniuses. It's like, wow. And look back, it's like, well, did I really learn a lot from them? Yeah. Okay. Being open and honest with students. Being present, love for your discipline, but also the love for your kids. I was very fortunate when my wife and I got married. My wife comes from a family of educators, and my father-in-law was a principal for close to 40 years, a teacher, coach, principal. My mother-in-law was a middle school English teacher for about the same amount of time, right? And they're out in the state of Ohio in public schools, and they were decorated teachers, and the care and the love they showed for students. And I remember my father-in-law sitting me down before my first class, like the week before we started. He says, education's really easy, right? And I'm just like, okay, He says, one rule you have to just think about, He says, teach every class like your child is sitting in that seat in front of you, and treat every family with the respect that you'd want to be treated if you were on the other side of that table. And he's talking from a teacher standpoint, and also from an administrator standpoint. And he said, if you do that, he says, you'll be successful. And that's something I think about, every day. And I also think about from a teaching standpoint is, and you heard me say this in the classes, even though I've been doing this longer than dirt, right? Doesn't mean I can't learn.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that I'm not going to make a mistake. And, having that open conversation with students and not being afraid to learn with them sometimes.
And how would you say your teaching style has changed since you first started to now?
Some of it has to do with the technology that we're using. Okay. Also, the how students have changed in 30 years. And you've heard me say this to the class, like, for example, note taking. All right. I think we have to, I see myself more prompting students to take notes, but before I didn't have to do that. So just knowing the environment that you're in, okay, just knowing your students and being able to help them with that.
All right. And since the world of computer science is evolving, SSA is offering a lot of competitive classes like AI and game design and other things like that. Will classes be offered in cybersecurity and other type of computer science realms?
That's something that's that we talk a lot about all the time. Very fortunate to work in a department that has the offerings that it does, and that's kudos to Mr. Haytalk and Mr. Wizard, because a lot of the classes that you see on our curriculum now on the books.
Mm-hmm.
They just didn't appear like last year or 2 years ago, oh, AI is a big thing, so let's have an AI class. It's been around for a long time here.
Yeah.
And Mr. Haytalk and Mr. Wizard, when I was the dean of students, I was the director of academics, and I would still teach 1 or 2 sections, but they were the one that had the foresight to look ahead and say, hey, these are some of the things that we want to expose to our kids. So our classes like AI and game design and the mobile apps class, that's been in our curriculum for several years, not just the new thing. So they have done a great job with doing that. I've like I said, I came in I was continuously teaching, but they were the architects of that. And we as a group are, looking, like you mentioned, cybersecurity.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing.
Yeah.
Okay, that's something that we're looking at. We're looking to see what some of the universities are offering, and how to prepare our kids, for that world of computer science.
All right. And for those students pursuing computer science in college, what advice do you give to them?
The neat thing about computer science now, before back in the Stone Age when I was in college, okay, it was basically all coding. When you came out of computer science, you were a programmer. You know how to program, algorithms, right? Computer science now has taken a whole different realm. There's an array of things that students can do. And you probably see that in your daily life. And everything that we do, there is some sort of electronic computer, something that is interacting with that. I would go in there with an open mind. Okay, taste test a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
All right, taste test what cybersecurity looks like. Mobile app development, whatever, and you realize that can open up, doors in so many different ways. We have students who have taken computer science in college who are doing things such as Timmy Gill, graduate of SSA, went to Columbia, and he is doing data analysis for Major League Baseball. Okay. So he put his love of baseball and his degree in computer science, and he married those two loves together, and basically he's doing what he enjoys. So you can find you can find an avenue through computer science and connect it to something, you know, outside of technology that means a lot to you. You know, so it's you know, limitless with that.
All right. Well, that's all I have. Thank you
right.
so much.
Thank
This
you.
was great.